Hi and welcome. My name is Sufyan Abrams and this is my reflection on grade 10 life science lesson I designed on ecosystems, specifically abiotic factors like soil, light, temperature, and how organisms adapt to these conditions. My three lesson objectives based on Bloom's taxonomy were first for learners to identify and describe the main abiotic factors, second to explain how specific factors influence plants and animal adaptations, and third to analyze and compare how different organisms have adapted to abiotic conditions in their environment. My lesson is structured into three phases, each using a different ICT tool at different SAMR level. In the introduction, about 10 minutes, I would display the title and my slides from my PowerPoint, then run a live Mentimeter poll asking learners several questions. Learners would respond anonymously on their own devices, and I display the live results so the class can discuss the patterns together before I introduce the lesson's objectives. This activity sits at the augmentation level of SAMR because Mentimeter replaces a simple show of hands with a tool that gives instant anonymous and visual feedback. It improves on the traditional method, but the underlying task of gauging prior knowledge stays fundamentally the same. In the development, the longest phase, I would teach each abiotic factor with its slide, pausing after each one to ask questions and allow brief discussion. I would then introduce a word wall sorting activity, where learners work in pairs to drag and carefully and classify real organisms like a reptile or water lily into the correct abiotic category. This activity reaches the modification level because the word will significantly redesigns the classification task. Learners get instant digital feedback and can adjust their answers immediately. With a static paper, worksheet simply cannot do. Finally, in conclusion, about 15 minutes, learners would choose one organism from the lesson and post an example of each adaptation to shared Padlet wall, using a sentence starter template to structure their thinking. Before we close with a Kahoot quiz covering all 5 abiotic factors, I'd place this at the redefinition level, the highest on the SAMR scale, because the Padlet creates a task that simply wasn't possible without technology. A live collaborative space where every learner contributes is visual and the whole class can see for real peer learning, while the Kahoot gives an immediate, engaging way to check whether all 3 objectives were achieved. Throughout the lesson, my role as a teacher would be to present content clearly and ask questions to deepen thinking, circulate the class to support learners who are struggling, and give real-time feedback at the end. Learners in turn would be constantly active participants, responding to polls, discussing in pairs, doing the sorting activity, and creating their own original content for the Padlet wall, rather than passively receiving information. To accommodate learners with different levels of abilities, they work in pairs in the development stage, so the stronger learners support those who struggle. The bilingual English and Afrikaans slides support English second language learners, and in the consolidation, learners choose their own organism with a sentence starter template for scaffolding and an extension question for early finishers. Reflecting on the lesson design, I believe that the ICT tools would genuinely deepen engagement and give real-time insight into the learner, understanding that a traditional textbook-based lesson simply wouldn't provide as effectively. If I were to refine it further, I'd build in a little more time for the development phase, since the wordwall activity could easily extend into a richer group discussion. Overall, I believe this lesson design meets the objectives and gives learners multiple meaningful ways to engage with the content. Thank you very much.